been decades since the Bee Gees ruled the charts. But even now, Barry Gibb can't hear one song without breaking. He stood on stages alone, under the same spotlights he once shared with his brothers. He smiled through tributes, waved through applause, and thanked millions of fans around the world. But behind closed doors, away from the legacy and the gold records, there's one track, one melody, that he can't play without feeling the weight of everything he's lost. It wasn't their biggest hit. It wasn't even his voice in the spotlight. But the moment that song starts, something in Barry folds, because hidden in its lyrics is a truth too painful for headlines. A message meant for no one, and yet understood by everyone who's ever lost someone they couldn't protect. And the reason this song still brings Barry Gibb to tears? It has nothing to do with fame. It has everything to do with the voices he still hears, and the ones that are no longer there. So what is the song that still breaks the last Bee Gees standing? And why did it take losing everything before he could finally understand what it meant? You're about to find out. For most of the world, Barry Gibb is a legend. The voice, the falsetto, the last surviving member of a musical dynasty that defined generations. But for Barry, being the last Bee Gee has never felt like a title. It's felt like a sentence. One by one, his brothers were taken from him. Andy, the youngest, gone at just 30. Maurice, the anchor and heartbeat of the group, passed in 2003. Then Robin, the twin Barry had harmonized with since they were boys, in 2012. And with each funeral, Barry wasn't just saying goodbye. He was becoming more and more alone in a world that still cheered his name, but no longer shared his history. Fans would tell him how much the music meant, how it changed their lives, but few asked what it cost to make it. Behind the fame, the Bee Gees were a family first. 3 brothers, sometimes 4, bound not just by talent, but by blood, friction, loyalty, and love. And when you're the last one standing, you don't just carry the legacy, you carry the memories, the mistakes, the what-ifs. And maybe that's why there's one song Barry Gibb has never been able to let go of, because in it, he hears everything he's lost and everything he wishes he could say. But what is that song, and why did it hit harder after his brothers were gone? In 1997, the Bee Gees were asked to write a song, not for themselves, but for someone else. That someone was Celine Dion. By then, the brothers had nothing left to prove. They had conquered pop, disco, ballads, rebuilt their career after the backlash, and once again stood at the top of the charts. They weren't chasing hits anymore. But when the request came for a ballad that would fit Celine's voice and spirit, Barry, Robin, and Maurice sat down together, just like they used to, and wrote Immortality.
And I will follow all the road that lies ahead.
It wasn't meant to be heartbreaking, not at first. It was about endurance, about memory, about the dream of living on through the people we leave behind.
I make my journey through eternity.
They recorded backing vocals for the track themselves, layering their harmonies beneath Celine's soaring lead. At the time, it was just another brilliant collaboration, Bee Gees' magic at work behind the scenes. But Barry had no idea what this song would come to mean, because just a few years later, those harmonies would be the only way to hear his brothers again. When Maurice passed away unexpectedly in 2003, Immortality took on a new shape. When Robin followed in 2012, the song wasn't just symbolic, it was personal. And Barry, now singing those same lines alone, felt the full weight of the lyrics.
And we don't say goodbye.
We don't say goodbye. We don't say goodbye. Not a performance. Not a charting hit. A haunting echo. But was this the song that still brings Barry Gibb to tears? Or was there another? One lyric, one memory, one moment, so powerful even Barry couldn't hold back? We'll get there soon. But first, let's rewind. To the brother who left too soon. Before the fame took full control, before the heartbreak, the headlines, the rehab, Andy Gibb was just the youngest Gibb brother with a dream and a voice that could melt radio dials.
If you get a little more than you're asking for, your love will turn the key.
He was never officially part of the Bee Gees lineup, but make no mistake, he was one of them. Barry helped launch his solo career, even wrote and produced some of Andy's biggest hits, like Shadow Dancing, which spent 7 weeks at number one in 1978. But Andy's rise was dizzying and dangerously fast. By the time he turned 21, he had back-to-back number ones, endless magazine covers, and the pressure of living up to a name that already carried weight. Behind the scenes, Barry watched his little brother unravel. The charm stayed on the surface. But underneath, Andy was struggling, emotionally and physically. He battled addiction, he craved approval, and worst of all, he never believed he deserved the love fans gave him. Barry tried to help, but like many families coping with fame and fragility, the lines blurred. Was he a mentor? A manager? A brother? By the late 80s, Barry admitted later, there was distance between them. Not anger, not betrayal, just the quiet ache of two people who didn't know how to say, "I miss you." When Andy died suddenly in 1988, just 5 days after turning 30, Barry was shattered. He spoke at the funeral. He kept Andy's memory alive in interviews. But something was different. He no longer performed Andy's songs. He avoided interviews that pushed too far. And according to those closest to him, there was one track he couldn't bring himself to hear, even decades later. A song tied directly to Andy's voice. So, was this the song that still makes Barry Gibb cry? Let's get closer. Because in the years after Andy's death, Barry carried a weight few could see. And one song would soon become the mirror for it all. When the Bee Gees took the stage in the late 90s, the harmonies were still tight. The crowd still roared. But something was missing. Andy had been gone for a decade. And though he'd never officially been a Bee Gee, his absence was a quiet, permanent space between the spotlight and the shadows. Barry never said much about it on stage. He rarely talked about Andy's final years in public at all. But if you watched closely, you could see it. In the way he glanced toward the wings when an old song started. In the slight catch in his throat during interviews. In the long pauses when someone asked about family. And then, in 2003, tragedy struck again. Maurice, Barry's twin and musical spirit, died suddenly from complications during surgery. It was like losing the engine of the Bee Gees, the heartbeat, the glue. And suddenly, Barry wasn't just the older brother. He was the bridge between what was and what had been lost. He and Robin tried to carry on, but the magic, the unspoken shorthand of three brothers in sync, was fading. In 2012, that final thread snapped. Robin died after a long battle with cancer. And Barry? He stood alone, at memorial concerts, at tribute shows. Under the same spotlights they once shared, now a lone silhouette. He once said in an interview, "I hear their voices when I sing. I still wait for their harmonies." It was no longer a performance. It was a haunting. And through it all, one song began to mean more than any other. A song they had written together. A song about life after death. About love that outlives us. Immortality. But this time, Barry wasn't just singing it. He was living it. When Barry, Robin, and Maurice wrote Immortality for Celine Dion in 1997, it was meant to be timeless, but not tragic. They wove their signature harmonies behind her powerhouse vocals, crafting a song about legacy, memory, and the idea that even when we're gone, our spirit remains. At the time, it was simply another jewel in their crown, an elegant ballad passed to another icon. But in the years that followed, the song took on a life and death of its own. As Barry watched his brothers pass one by one, the lyrics began to sting differently. So this is who I am, and this is all I know.
So this is who I am.
It wasn't just poetic anymore. It was personal.
And this is all I know.
And when Barry began performing Immortality on his own, backed by recordings of his brother's voices, now preserved only in audio, the grief came rushing in. Fans who attended those solo performances say you could feel the shift in the room. The stage would dim. Barry would close his eyes. And for a few minutes, he wasn't just singing. He was communing with ghosts. We don't say goodbye. It was no longer just a lyric, it was a promise, a refusal to let go. In interviews, Barry has admitted that Immortality brings him to tears because he can still hear Maurice and Robin singing with him. And that's the part that breaks him, not the fame, not the applause. But the sound of the brothers he can never bring back, echoing through time as though they never left. Still, is this the one song that brings him to tears every single time? Maybe. But there's one more, one song older than the others. And when Barry hears it, it's not just his brother's voices he hears. It's his own childhood and the grief that started long before the world was watching. In 1968, Robin Gibb stepped forward with a haunting melody and a voice drenched in melancholy. The result was one of the Bee Gees' most enduring early hits, I Started a Joke.
I started a joke, which started the...
At the time, few knew what it really meant. Some thought it was religious. Others called it existential. But Robin never explained it fully. It didn't need explanation. The song had a weight to it, a sadness that wrapped around your heart and stayed there. I started a joke, which started the whole world crying.
Which started the whole world crying.
When Robin passed in 2012, Barry began performing the song alone, often in tribute concerts, standing under soft blue lights, letting the lyrics fall like whispers. And that's when something changed. Fans noticed that Barry rarely made it through the performance without his voice catching, his eyes glistening, sometimes his hands trembling slightly as he strummed his guitar. But I couldn't see that the joke was on me.
That the joke was on me.
In those lines, Barry wasn't just singing his brother's words. He was living them. Because if the Bee Gees were ever a joke in the eyes of critics, if they were ever mocked for their falsetto, or their disco roots, or their glittery stage wear, Barry knew now that the world had missed the point. It was never about image. It was always about brotherhood. And now, when Barry performs I Started a Joke, it's no longer an act. It's a confession, a quiet reckoning with everything left unsaid. So, is this the song that still makes him cry? Some say yes, but there's one more, arguably the earliest wound of all. A song that wasn't just written about grief. It was written through it, and it came long before Barry lost Robin or Maurice, back when he was still holding on to hope for Andy. Andy Gibb was just 30 when his heart gave out. To the world, it was framed as another pop star tragedy. To Barry, it was something else entirely, a failure he never got the chance to fix. Andy had been fragile for years. His fame burned fast and hot. By the end, his voice was frayed, his spirit exhausted. He had checked into rehab, made promises to do better, even tried to restart his music career. But time wasn't on his side. Just months before Andy died, he recorded a few rough demos, stripped down, emotionally raw. One of them, according to biographers and studio sources, was never released. It was handed directly to Barry. The title? Still unknown. The lyrics? Never printed. The tape? Allegedly kept in Barry's possession to this day. There is no official statement from Barry verifying the existence of this tape or its contents. But multiple sources close to the family have hinted that such a recording may exist, and that Barry has kept it private for over 3 decades. Why? Because, as one family friend allegedly put it, it wasn't just a song, it was Andy's last message. Whether that tape is real or just rumor, we know this. Barry has never truly let go of Andy. In 2012, during an emotional interview following Robin's death, Barry said, "Losing Andy was the hardest because it was preventable. I always wonder if I could have done more. And when he performs certain songs, like To Love Somebody or
To love somebody, to love somebody.
Words, songs the Bee Gees once sang together, fans say you can see when Andy crosses his mind. A flicker, a pause, a line delivered not to the audience, but to the past. And if there is a song out there with Andy's final voice, maybe Barry doesn't share it, not out of selfishness, but because some goodbyes aren't meant to be public. They're meant to be protected. You've just heard the story of the song that still breaks Barry Gibb. Not because of the melody, but because of the memories it carries. Immortality isn't just a ballad, it's a conversation between the living and the lost. A reminder that grief doesn't end when the music stops. And some goodbyes echo long after the crowd goes quiet. But here's the haunting truth. Barry Gibb never told the world which song made him cry the most. He didn't have to. Because sometimes the most powerful emotions aren't declared in interviews. They're revealed in a single note, a trembling lyric, a silence that follows. And maybe one day we'll hear that rumored demo from Andy Gibb. Or maybe we won't. But what we do know is this. Every time Barry steps on stage, every time he sings Immortality, he's not just performing, he's remembering, and that memory, that ache, that love, will never fade. What do you think the most emotional Bee Gees song is? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want more untold stories behind the music, stories filled with heartbreak, hope, and the echoes of legends, subscribe to RetroWaves. Because some songs are more than hits, they're lifelines, and we're here to make sure they're never forgotten.